Welcome to the Why Not Today podcast, where we celebrate determination, courage, and the power of saying, why not today? I am your host, Leslie Kane, and in each episode, we dive into inspiring stories of individuals who have taken bold steps, faced their fears, and embraced the possibility of today. From entrepreneurs to artists, dreamers, and doers, we explore the moments when they said, enough waiting, and why not today? Join me as we uncover the heartwarming, the audacious, the transformative, whether it's pursuing a lifelong passion, overcoming obstacles, or simply choosing joy. Our guests share their journey and inspire us all. I started this podcast in honor of my father, Patrick Kane, who often did say, why not today? And always remember, you're just one decision away from changing your life. So I'm excited for my guest today, and it's funny, her name is Leslie Kuster. So when the person introduced us, she's like, I can't even say Leslie K because we're both Leslie K's. So there's just like a few digits, letters in our name that separate us. So I always talk about where we connected and where we met. So I had on the podcast Laura Carney, who wrote a book, and then she did something with Stacy Lauren, who will be on the podcast. We haven't had her yet, who has a Facebook group, and it's called Do the Thing, which is very much in alignment of why not today. So I talked to her one day, and she's like, oh my gosh, I need to meet my friend and talk to my friend Leslie Kuster. So Leslie had me on her podcast, and now she's here, and she's written a book and got all kinds of courage stuff that we're going to talk about. And so, and of course, her name is spelled the exact same. The first name is the exact same as mine. So isn't that even double fun? So Leslie, why don't you introduce yourself, a little bit about you and a fun fact, and then we'll get into the courage.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. So my name's Leslie Kuster. I am the founder and CEO of a women's clothing line called Back from Bali. And it's women's like bohemian style clothing. And you could find it on Amazon and on my website. And because of the success of the business, which honestly took me a really long time to be successful, but when I became successful, I decided to really focus in on how in the world I did it. And so I wrote a book called 7 Keys to 7 Figures, the Women Entrepreneur's Guide to Money and Freedom.
Love it. And I can't wait to hear all your stories. And if some people are listening and some people are watching, because we do both. Is that one of your shirts?
Yeah, matter of fact, it is.
Very
Yeah, actually, there you go. So you have a little bit of like, this kind of looking here, and you have
I love it.
like hand done embroidery. I do a lot of like loose, comfortable, colorful, a lot of, stuff for resort or going traveling or that type of thing too. So
Yeah, I
it's
need
really
to. Although I started reading your book and know about it, I haven't Googled to look at or looked at Amazon. I'm go shopping.
Back from Bali on Amazon or my website or Instagram, all those
All
places.
those places. All right. So, what's a fun fact about Leslie?
Oh, right. Okay. Fun fact is that in the last year, I have become a pickleball addict. I mean, literally an addict. So my husband and I, we play definitely 6 days a week, anywhere
Wow.
from, an hour and a half to 2 hours to sometimes 3 hours a day. And it's just, I just have fallen in love with it. So anyone who doesn't know pickleball, go play it. It's so much fun.
That's funny. That I know other people that have played it, and pretty much everybody that says they started finished just like you did, that they're addicted.
Yeah, it's so interesting, this part of it.
I haven't tried. Maybe one day I will. I was gonna, when I finished grad school, I was gonna start tennis, and somebody gave me a tennis racket, and then I was traveling all the time for work and got quote unquote tennis elbow or tendonitis, and I had to have surgery. So that was the end of that career. But that was a long time. So hopefully I've recovered. So Leslie, what does courage mean to you?
I love the topic of your show because this is the question that we all have to ask ourselves. Like, are we going to make changes in our lives, or are we not going to make changes in our lives? And so this is what I think courage means to me. Courage means to me, you get in a place in your life where you feel disappointed in yourself, or you're unhappy with your life, you're happy with your business, your money, your relationship, where you live, how you feel as a person, whatever it is. And you have the courage to go and change it. And that is what courage means to me. There's too many people sitting on the sidelines and just waiting for life to happen to them. And my experience has been you have to make life happen to you. I mean, life happens and all kinds of challenges happen, but it's really our attitude towards those challenges that really define our lives and make the beautiful life we have or don't have.
Yeah, so true. And I think, yes, your definition is so in alignment with what I'm doing with this podcast and the courage coaching that I'm working on, that so many people are just stuck. I found a lot of unsettling in the world right now. And
Yeah.
people are like, what's next? Or I'm not happy. I was on a leadership call the other day, and because I'm right outside of DC, there's a lot of government employees. And I've never heard this, but people literally have clocks on their death, their countdown clocks waiting to retire.
Wow.
Like thinking
Wow.
work is this terrible thing. And it's like, I love what I do. And I'm excited to work because I'm doing things I enjoy and living my life. And so many people are not, which is so sad.
Yeah, no, that's so sad to hear something like that. And but at the same time, I understand it. And I also lived that kind of life at some point many years ago when I was working in corporate. I was working in New York City in public relations and like had, all these corporate clients. And, Monday morning was the worst day, Sunday night and Monday mornings were my worst days. And I lived that for, I don't know, maybe around about 6 years or 7 years, something like that. And then in my early 30s, I went traveling because actually something happened in New York City. I got robbed, and all of a sudden I had money because of being robbed from the insurance. And I said, you know
Huh?
what? I'm quitting and I'm going to go traveling. And I
Oh,
went
wow. I knew
traveling.
you traveled. I wasn't sure how you got
That was how I
there.
started my business back from Bali, was because of that
Okay, let's
robbery.
talk about that story. And isn't that
Yeah.
funny that that pivotal moment happens that completely changes our life? And like that was a bad thing that happened that turned out to be an amazing thing. So let's talk about, you're working corporate America, working the rat race,
Yeah.
and then you got robbed. And what
Yeah.
happened?
And then I got robbed, and all of a sudden I, got a whole check here. And I had always wanted to go traveling. I had just kind of separated from my first husband, so I was sort of single at the time. And I always wanted to travel to Indonesia. Why? I have no idea, Leslie. I saw like this group of islands on the map, and I was like, I want to go there. But let me tell you, it took some courage to do that. So I
Yes.
was single. I
Did
was
you
in
go
my
by
early,
yourself?
I went all by myself. I was in
Wow,
my
good for
early
you.
30s. Yeah. And it was scary, and it definitely took courage. And I remember being on the airplane going over, and I think all the fear just left me. It was all the beginning before getting on the plane. That was the scary part. But once I was on the plane and once I landed and all of that, I was like, this is fun. And that took courage to do that. Like I could have just stayed in New York City and gotten another job, or, did something,
Yeah,
I don't know, waitressing to get out of the corporate world. But I jumped on the airplane by myself. So all of these courageous things that we're talking about, this is what leads you to the next step. And I had no idea that out of this trip that I took, that it would actually turn into my career. And that's what happened.
crazy. What a pivotal moment. And the courage to travel and to get on that plane. And it's like once you do, you're okay. I was with my nephew this weekend, and when COVID happened, he worked virtually and asked his boss if he could move to San Diego, which he did. And actually, even before he did that, he traveled all by himself to Europe. And he does that all the time. He just like, where's Sam? I don't know. He jumped on a plane. He's in South America. He's in Hawaii surfing. I don't know if he's been to Australia or wants to be. And he's like, I travel by myself and I go to a bar and I meet a new friend and then hang out with them. And, there's a whole world, but we're all afraid. We're all waiting for that person to go with us. And if you keep waiting, you'll never do it.
You have to not wait. I had an experience very early in life where, my boyfriend died in a car accident. And it was that experience of when I was 17, it really got drilled into me at that time that you never know what's going to happen. You really don't even know if you can have your life any longer. And
Mhm.
that experience has stayed with me my entire life. And I always ask myself that question, like, what, if I want to do something, and if I don't do this thing, and then who knows what's going to happen in life? I may never even have this opportunity any longer. So I always pushed myself to do courageous things. And I've done many, many, many courageous things, actually. Moving to another country, building a huge business takes a lot of courage. Moving back to America recently, we just relocated back to the United States after 20 years living in Switzerland.
Oh, wow.
That took a lot of courage, actually, because
Yeah.
we lived a really comfortable life. Heinz, he was working full time, so I had a husband with a full-time job. We had a gorgeous apartment. We had lots of friends. We lived in Switzerland, which is a very comfortable lifestyle.
Right.
And nothing was wrong with our lives. And it mostly came from me. I wanted to change, and I wanted to come back to the United States. And it wasn't easy at all to do this. It was really, really hard, to tell you the truth. But we did it, and now we're here, and I'm so glad I did.
And I can see the smile on your face. You light up being glad to be back.
I am.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about, so you went to Indonesia, and then I know from reading your book, you came back and decided this is not the world you wanted. So you started a business. So let's talk about that. And how long ago was that?
It was like a really long time ago. We're talking about like in the early 90s. So, what
Okay.
is this, like 30 years ago, something like that?
Okay.
And yeah, I came back to New York. I had traveled for 7 months, and I needed to get a job again. And so I was looking through the New York Times, which is the way you looked for jobs back then, on a physical newspaper.
That's funny.
And I was like, I just don't want to do this. And I had this light bulb moment that went, I wonder if I could bring back clothing from Indonesia that I saw when I was traveling, and particularly in Bali. I saw like really cute kids' clothes that was batik with like moons and stars and all kinds of oranges and colors and things. And I just thought, why don't I give it a try? Like, why not? Why not today?
Why
It's
not
either
today? Exactly.
it was either this or it was getting a job. And getting a job again was just, I so much didn't want to, because I had just experienced freedom, 7 months of traveling and freedom and all of this. And I wanted that experience to be my life. So I literally jumped back on an airplane with an empty duffel bag. And I went back to Bali. I hit the streets. I went store to store and just started buying and stuffing it into a duffel bag and bringing it back to the US. Back then, you didn't have 50 pound,
Right.
anymore. You could only
Yeah.
have 200 pounds. And I signed up for street fairs in New York City, because
Oh,
that's
wow.
still living. They had all these fairs every Saturday, every Sunday. They had Christmas markets, whatever. And I just started doing a street fair. And, I'd never done sales before, never sold a thing in my life. I don't know anything really about clothing in particular, except I like wearing clothing. And my booth was stormed by mothers buying the clothes like crazy. It was almost like a frenzy of purchasing and buying. And at the end of the day, I remember $800 in cash in my hand. And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
wow, this is really fun. And I realized I better get back on another airplane, because I'm going to be sold out soon. And that's how I started my business.
Wow. Love all the courage and all those decisions to, and trying all these new things, but just taking, and I think what I hear is you just took one step at a time.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing. People, like, you didn't probably have a big business plan. You probably didn't even have a business, an LLC or anything at that point. You didn't have a business account. You just did. And that's kind of how I started the podcast. I just started. And I think we have to have courage just to start. And when you started to where you are now, you could never probably in a million years imagine
Oh,
where you've come.
not in a million years
Yeah,
would
like
I.
even your wildest, craziest dreams couldn't have got there.
I don't even think I had the capacity at that time to dream this big. I don't think it was even in my possibility. You know, all I
Right.
wanted was to not get a job in New York City in a big corporate high rise and to have like enough money that, you know, I could pay my rent, which was really cheap at the time, and, you know, go to spiritual retreats, which is what I like to do in the summertime. And that was really my goals, was just to like pay those expenses. And I even remember like saying to my dad, by the way, you and I also have share our dad's story too. And my dad passed like 4.5 years ago, and he would always say, just do it. So it was really
Oh,
similar
wow.
to what, you know, what your podcast and what your whole work is about, of just, you know, just do the thing and, you know, get things done, right? And
Did
why
your
not?
dad work for himself or did he have his own business?
Yeah, he worked for himself. So I come from a family of
Yeah,
entrepreneurs, which makes it really much easier for me
yes,
to be an entrepreneur.
I think so.
But I remember like early on in the business saying, or not early on, I think it was it actually was not early on. It was when I starting to do well in the business. In fact, it was about 20 years later, matter of fact.
Okay.
This is my story. My story is that I had a business for 20 years, this clothing business, going to Bali, importing it in, selling it at markets, at holiday markets. But I never ever did more than 60, $70,000 a year in revenue. I'm not talking about in my pocket, just
Right.
in. And after about 20 years or so of that, I made a very conscious decision that I wanted more money and I wanted to be more successful. And so this started to happen. And I remember saying to my dad, maybe when I hit over 100,000, I remember saying, you know, oh, 250,000 would be my absolute top. You know, if I ever could reach doing 250,000 in sales, that would be amazing. And, you know, now I'm in multiple seven figures. So, you know, it has just grown. My capacity to believe what is possible is what has completely changed.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, we start here and we grow. And I was listening to something yesterday and he talked about vision boards. And in a vision board, you should leave space. Don't fill it
Mm.
all up because you never know, because you don't have enough capacity, is basically what they said, to see the biggest picture.
Ooh,
And so
nice.
leaving space in there for other things to happen, you just don't know. So what happened it, at that 20 years that you're like, all right, I want to make more money? Was there a pivotal moment? Was there something you read, heard, talked to somebody? What was that moment that you're like, okay, enough is enough. Why not today?
I was in my early 50s. Business, I actually had two businesses at the time. And yeah, but they both did under 100,000 a year. I did okay. You know, I paid for some
Right.
great vacations, you know, bought some clothes, contributed to my, you know, my husband and my living expenses. But I had for the last few years in my early 50s, starting to this building up inside of me that I could be doing so much more. And also, frankly, envious of other people who had more money than I had and were able to do other things that we were not able to do, like buy our dream home or, you know, different things like that. And it really didn't come from the outside, like an event happening in my life. It really came deep inside myself, where I felt that I could be doing so much better than I had been doing. I could be pushing myself more. I could be learning more. I knew I was smart and I knew I could be successful, but I didn't really allow myself, wanted all these things until that moment. And I was sitting in our apartment in a little village in Switzerland, which is where we were living at the time. And I said to myself, there is no way I am not waking up on my next birthday, not doing over 100,000 a year in sales. No way. It was over for me. And I committed to that. And I then had the honesty inside of me to say to myself, I want money. I want wealth. I want more money. Where before that, I was embarrassed to say anything like that on the outside or on the inside.
Well, I think that's how we were raised, and you didn't talk about money. You didn't talk about how much you made,
No,
and you didn't ask for more. And not to throw us in the world of women, but and women don't ask for it as much as men do. I hate to say it,
that's
but
right.
so true.
Exactly. And, I had all these, money stories as we all have. And my money story basically went, a value of a woman is to marry a man with money. All right. And this is really how I was raised. So I never thought it was actually my responsibility to do this. It wasn't my
Right,
job to make the money. It wasn't my job to do all this. This is not what I'm supposed to do. I started, Leslie, really questioning these beliefs that I had. That was my first step. I started to go, why do you think that if you had more money, you would lose your freedom? Because this is the stuff I was thinking.
right.
Why do you think if you, became really successful, you would no longer be a spiritual person? I started to go, wow, maybe these things actually aren't true. And I literally got out my computer, or I think at the time I was writing in my journal, and I would write these statements down. Like, if I'm successful, I won't be a nice spiritual person anymore. And I changed that to and. I am very successful and I'm very spiritual, right? I make a lot of money and I have tons of freedom. And I started to just change the ideas inside my head that these things could be possible and they don't work against each other. And that was one of the first absolute steps, which is why mindset, what we say to ourselves, the stories we repeat over and over, is one of the most critical things that we need to learn how to manage and control.
So, so true. And as I asked you, was there a pivotal moment? And it was absolutely, you're sitting in your living room in your apartment and you just had that, like a new thought you'd never thought before.
Yep, that's
And
right.
it's like, oh, can be different. And look what you were able to do. So fast forward, you hit your goals. Did you make it by your birthday?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I made it by my birthday. And then things, once you make this decision, once you have the guts and to say what you want. And this is what I have found is that women don't say what they really, really, really want. They keep it to themselves. They don't even hear it within themselves because they're not connected to what they really, really want. Once I began to be super clear about what I really wanted, then it was almost like the universe. I know it sounds cliche, but the universe started rolling out certain opportunities, such as all of a sudden I heard about, and I just got chills down my back, meaning that there's this connection to the universe, right? That when we start to
Absolutely.
remove ourselves from these things. But so, for example, I all of a sudden heard about this conference in Seattle, Washington that Amazon was putting on. And I was in New York City at the time. So, it was a big flight to go over there, but
Right.
I jumped on a plane and I booked that conference. So things just started to unroll for me. And at that conference, there was a wonderful speaker, and her name was Lisa Satora. And as it turned out, she was a consultant for people who are building businesses online. And I got her card. And these are the things that started to unfold for me. And over the course of, this is now, we're talking about maybe 13 years ago, this is how I began to really build the kind of business, big business that I now manage
Yeah, that's awesome. And
and
how
have money and freedom.
exactly. And
Yeah.
I love this, the coincidences, God winks. Somebody told me, oh, I know what it was. I interviewed somebody that I don't even know how I found her, but it was one of those, not even near me in Texas. And it's like crazy coincidence. Like her sister in law lives in the same town I do. And when we were talking, she told me the name, and I'm like, "Is she a dentist?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "that was my dad's and my mom's and my sister's dentist. Still my
Yeah.
mom's sister's." And saw my dad the day he passed away, which is
Oh,
crazy. And when I told her that, I'm like, that's just crazy. The coincidences, the God winks. And she's like, when you're doing what you love, she said, and you're in alignment with your values, and those things start happening.
Yeah,
Which,
I agree.
and I
And
had another mentor say one time, something happened to me, and people were like, "Oh, that just fell in your lap." And she's like, "No, things don't fall in your lap unless your lap is out there.
I love that.
You know, declaring what you want."
Yeah, I heard a quote from Oprah who she said there's no such thing as luck. That luck is when opportunity and action come together.
Yeah, so true. Well, I loved your book and so many tidbits and information, and I want to go back and read it again and take some notes, and um, so much encouragement and hope. And I love that you took what you learned and passing it on.
Yeah.
And that's really what the hope of this podcast is, that we're taking people's courage stories and passing it on and giving people hope that, like, if Leslie and Leslie can do it, a podcast, a book, a company, 7 figures, travel, all the things, then somebody else can. And giving
Yeah.
people permission to say, me too, and give people the hope that life isn't as bad as it seems. And, you just got to take that first step and say, why not today? And then take the next step. And as we talked about, you never know ever where that could take you. And the
Yeah.
thoughts, we're not capable of knowing how big and how expansive. If somebody else can do it, we can do it. And if nobody's done it before, we can be the first to do it.
Yeah, and I think it's important for anybody listening to notice whenever you start going, I wonder if. Because this is really the key to, it's kind of like the seed. I wonder if I started that business. I wonder if I quit the job. I wonder if I moved. I wonder if I left this relationship. When you start asking yourself, I wonder if, that is how you start this process of taking the courage and changing things. And not everybody has the same I wonder. And this is what's
Oh,
important,
no.
right? So when you have an I wonder if, this is for you. This is the universe. This is your feminine power. This is your spirit talking to you about what your next steps may be and should be.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm seeing a lot of, that people are unsettled and like wondering, like, what's next? But then there's other people that doesn't even cross their mind to do anything other than go to a job, hate their job, as they call it, the Sunday scaries. And Monday, they said most people have heart attacks on Monday morning.
Oh,
They don't know anything different. And I'm grateful that my father was an entrepreneur and your father, and we watched that, and we were witness to it, and we could then emulate it and create our own life similar.
It is, we are 100% responsible for our lives, whether our life is good, where we have something to do with it. If our lives are not good, well, guess what? You got something to do with it. And we have to completely take responsibility and make the changes that we need to make, that are scary, that go outside our comfort zones, because this is our, as they say, our one precious life, right? And if not now, when are you going to do it? And that was, back to when we left Switzerland, that was the question I asked myself, do I want to die in Switzerland? That was it. So
Right.
I'm in my 60s now. I'm like, all right, is that what I want? And the answer was clearly no. And so the next question was, well, then when are you leaving? Why not now?
Why not
And
today?
why not today? And that's how change happens.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think we could talk forever and ever. We're going to
Yeah.
have more conversations, stay connected. But how would you encourage somebody else? I know we've kind of talked around it a lot, but how would you encourage somebody else that's stuck or like, what's next?
Yeah.
Why not today?
Yeah. Take time to get empty inside yourself. For in any way that you know how to do that. Meditation, going for walks in nature, journaling, writing things down in journals, hugging a tree, whatever it is. You need to be alone and do this on a regular basis and start to feel inside yourself what you wonder about. What is it that you're wondering about? What is it that you're dissatisfied about? What are those things? So you start to get clear about what it is that you want and what these things are that you want to change. And then based on that, take some kind of action. So marry it. We need to do what I like to call inner action and outer action. The inner action starts with being quiet and getting clear about what we want. But unless we actually do something about it, okay, I mean, all the vision boards in the world is actually not going to do anything unless you actually make the phone call or send the email or join the mastermind or hire the coach or whatever it is. So it's finding out what you want, having the quiet space to do it, and then making sure you take some action towards it.
So true. And completely agree with that. So I always try to track back when I do these to connect to my dad. And most people are like, well, I never met your dad. How can I track back? So I always, through our conversation, try to connect back. So one, when you mentioned you love pickleball, my dad had never played pickleball. And when he passed away, the first thought I had is I want to do a nonprofit to honor him. And we looked into, and this was 11 years ago, looked into doing a pickleball tournament. And actually talked to a lawyer about an LLC. Instead of like a 5K, we were going to do pickleball. But that was a lot of work to do not the LLC, the 501(c)(3). And so, fast forward, if I'd done that, I might not have done the podcast. So, talking about being an entrepreneur, both of our dads were, having that freedom to create the life you want. And that's the life I grew up in with my dad. And, he owned his own business. There were 6 of us kids. And it wasn't always perfect and it wasn't always amazing, but he always made it work. And I think I hear a lot of that in your story. It wasn't always perfect in the beginning.
Well, and by the way, it's still not perfect. Business is still tough, and I still have tons of challenges because, like, I like to say being an entrepreneur is like getting a PhD in self-development.
Oh my goodness. So true.
You're in a constant state of learning. And if you want your business to survive, and there's a lot of reasons that it won't, okay, but if you want your business to survive, you need to do the work and change and bring in pivot and all those things that you hear people talk about, because it never gets to a point where it's just I mean it actually does get to different times of points where it's easy, but then it changes again and then it gets hard and then it gets easy and then it gets hard, and that's just how it is. And you have
to I know when I've had a bad day, and my dad did have a part of his life that business wasn't great, and he did get a job and he hated every second of it, and being told what to do and in that box. And every once in a while, if I have a bad day, I'm like, you know what, I do not want to go work for somebody else. I'm going to figure it out, or I'm going to work a little harder, or I'm going to get a little more creative and figure it out, because I do not want to go work for somebody else and have that lack of freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you. Lots of insight, lots of information. I was taking notes as I was listening, and I'm going to probably have to go back and listen to it again. So thanks for joining us on this inspiring journey. Remember, every day is an opportunity to take action, chase your dreams, and make a difference. So why not today? So make sure you subscribe, share, hit the podcast, keep pushing forward. And until next time, stay motivated and keep making things happen. So Leslie, thanks for being our guest. And you can find the podcast at whynottodaypodcast.com, and I will share all Leslie's contact information in the show notes. So thank you, Leslie. And remember, say, why not today? And just do it.